Welcome to the Cinematic Tabletop House Rules video. My name is Damo. So my gaming group use a number of house rules, and I thought it would be a good idea to lay them down for all of you to see and maybe check out for yourselves. See if perhaps they improve and enhance your games of bolt action as well. As far as platoon level tabletop wargame rule sets go, I think bolt action's a real cracker. Armoured fighting vehicle pricing notwithstanding. However, the house rules obviously introduce a few tweaks and changes, which in my opinion and my friends' opinions, make it even better. So without further ado, onto the rules. First rule on the docket is the MMG Suppression rule. So MMG teams inflict 1d2 pins when a target that is shot at is hit. This rule only applies to infantry MMG teams, not vehicle-mounted MMGs, HMGs, or LMGs of any kind, etc. So this is one of the quibbles I have with the rule set. I mean, historically, if you did have a machine gun mounted on a very stable platform, such as a MG42 or any kind of machine gun in the medium machine gun designation, if it's mounted on a tripod, and particularly if it's belt-fed, then suppression of enemy infantry is its chief purpose. As the rules currently are out of the box as of publishing this video, I don't think it's very well represented in the rules in bolt action. So this minor tweak, rather than just applying one pin to a shot enemy, but D2, I think that puts it in a pretty sweet spot in my opinion. It's not too overpowered, it's not too limp, it's just right. I think it's also important to note that this is only for infantry operated MMG teams. This is because they have more situational awareness than say an MMG team or just an MMG gunner operating the weapon in a vehicle. Perhaps a little bit more stability as well. I don't know. It just seems to make sense to us and also kind of fits in with making that 50-point regular 3-man MMG crude weapon a little bit more, I guess, desirable. I mean, will people start using them in tournaments? I don't think so, but we're happy with it, so it's good enough for us. Next up we have smoke grenades. Smoke grenades launched from mortars or howitzers that miss the target resolve placement by rolling a scatter die or using the bolt action scatter template, and they land 2d6 inches in the direction generated. Now I gotta say, this is probably the one rule that I think is the dumbest, if I can use a term that strongly, in the rule set. As they currently stand, if you miss with your placement, then the opponent gets to place that or 3-inch, 4-inch, whatever sized marker it is, anywhere within 12 inches of the place designated by the shooter. So not only do you waste an action, you potentially place a line of sight blocking plume of smoke somewhere where it's advantageous for the opponent. I don't know if this is just a purely tournament thing. I never played first edition. I don't know if people spammed it. But as it stands in a limited turn game, if you get penalized for trying to use smoke, which in World War II was a big deal, you know. If you get penalized for that, then I don't think anyone's going to bother using it. And lo and behold, no one really does. I use it a bit to varying effect, but I think this actually makes it a lot better. So that's pretty much it. Medic. Any infantry or artillery unit that is activated may also activate a friendly medic that is within 6 inches of it, provided an order check is successfully passed, if required. Once the unit has completed its order, the activated medic is immediately given either a run or advance order after an order check has been made if the medic has any pins, and it must end the movement within 6 inches of the unit that activated it. If this is impossible, then the medic goes down instead. This ability cannot be used if the targeted medic is inside a transport vehicle or building. We found that when we first started playing bolt action, the medics were always out of position where they couldn't help their men, because usually what happens is the units that can actually capture objectives, shoot at enemies, etc. are going to be the ones that you activate first, and then medics are kind of way down the list, but in that case it also means that the medic's going to be way out of range to actually save their lives. So this way it's kind of like a reverse snap 2, where you activate, your 10-man squad, they move ahead, do their thing, and then once their action has been resolved, the medic resolves his action as long as he ends up within 6 inches. And by God, it works. Medics aren't completely useless. Now I imagine some people may counter with, but then that kind of makes the officer's snap 2 less useful, but I don't think that is the case at all. It makes it more useful because you reserve the snap 2s for actual fighting units. At any rate, I highly recommend that you give it a go. If you do, then make sure you tell me how it works out in the comment section. Non-combatants. Whenever a unit is given an order to shoot or assault a medic or chaplain, that unit must pass an order check with a -1 modifier before measuring. If this check fails, the unit intentionally overshoots its target. The shots automatically miss and the order is resolved. This check must be made every time a unit is ordered to shoot at a medic or chaplain. Fanatical units may ignore this check. So this rule works out pretty well, provided you don't game it too hard, such as, placing chaplains and medics in positions where they provide sort of a cover for other units or blocking other units. I got the idea actually from playing other games such as Chain of Command, where in that if you shoot at medic, then the men make a bad things happens roll and the force morale may drop because it's a pretty scummy thing to do. So this was pretty much the only thing I could think of that would sort of work with this rule set, and yeah, it very occasionally comes up, and I figured it's a nice little touch for fanatics such as SS or Japanese to not really care about that sort of thing and just go ahead and bayonet all and sundry. Flamethrower teams. If a flamethrower team fails its ammo check, it is not removed from play but may continue to receive orders until it routs or is killed. The team cannot shoot at enemy units but may still capture objectives and conduct assaults. A marker should be placed next to the team to clearly identify it has exhausted its fuel supply. This rule only applies to flamethrower teams, not embedded flamethrower troops in units such as engineers and pioneers. In those cases, the flamethrower unit is removed and the remaining loader becomes a rifle-armed trooper as usual. So this is a modified version of an earlier rule where once upon a time the flamethrower team were still removed, but it didn't count as a kill because as the rules stand officially, once they run out of ammo they just leg it off the battlefield, which is fair enough, but I'm not sure whether it's in the FAQ errata or whatever where it actually specifies it doesn't actually count as a kill, because in many scenarios losing a die, an order die that is, means that the opponent gets a point or 2 points or however many points, which to me just seems silly. Personally, I think that just having them clear the battlefield is fine, just don't reward the other player a point as if they had actually killed him. But some of the other players in the group decided, nah, have them still on the table so they can hold objectives and so forth. But I don't know, they don't have backup weapons. But as it stands, it's fine. I can live with it. And so that's how we play the house rule. Battlefield wreckage. Destroyed vehicles count as obstacles that provide hard cover, if armored, otherwise soft cover, and can be crossed by infantry as long as no model ends its action on top of the obstacle. Flaming vehicle wreckage cannot be crossed, however. So this one's pretty straightforward. Might even actually be in the core rules. Perhaps not though, otherwise why would I have added this? Also of note, any flaming vehicles, if you're playing a dawn assault or longest day type scenarios that take place at night or low light conditions, then flaming vehicle wreckage will illuminate an area around the wreck to a distance of 6 inches. Next up we've got buildings in line of fire. Units shooting out of buildings can only fire at targets that are within a 90-degree arc of fire from the designated openings on the floor occupied by the unit, such as windows, doors, holes, so on. Remember that a maximum of 2 models may fire per opening or 5 per building side if shooting from the roof or similarly open building facing, found in rulebook page 123. The same applies to units shooting at targets within buildings unless using high explosive weapons, in which case of course they just have to shoot the building itself. We found that this rule helped clear up a few inconsistencies with who can shoot in and out of buildings. If you just say it's a 90-degree arc, then it makes it simple. You just get the old line of fire measuring thingamabob, see if people can shoot in or out, and you're on your way. Because before, I remember, you could have just some ridiculous, shooting out 180 degrees from an opening. I don't know, in my mind it meant that people would just hang out of a building, and just why would they even get the extra defense rules? It would just make things a bit more complicated. This, it's an extra rule, but it works fine. Alright, wall of text coming at you. Tanks and obstacles. Any fully tracked vehicle that has a damage value of 8 or more may attempt to push through a section of dense terrain that consists mainly of trees, bushes, etc. This requires an advance order and a roll of 2d6, or a run order and a roll of 3d6. If the result of the roll is equal to or less than the tank's damage value, then the tank has successfully forged its way through the wooded area. If it is greater than the tank's damage value, then it immediately halts upon contact with the terrain section, receives a pin marker, and changes its order to down. If the result is a 12 or higher, the tank also becomes immobilized for the remainder of the game. This maneuver may only be attempted if the vehicle can end its movement fully clear of the terrain section. Otherwise, another course of action must be chosen after declaring the order and measurement has been completed. Tanks may also attempt to cross bocage with an advance order without the benefit of a Cullen hedge cutter. Roll 1d6. On a 1 or a 2, the tank is stuck, becomes immobilized on the edge of the initial contact with the bocage. Any other roll means the tank has successfully crossed the bocage. So it means that tanks can, at some risk, move through difficult or dense terrain, which I guess they could in reality. If the tree isn't some massive behemoth of Mother Nature, then it could, push over saplings, obviously, but, smaller trees, medium-sized trees, depending on the tank, of course. And this is reflected by the the damage value as they have it in this game. This is another one of those rules, which, yeah, sure, it's another rule, but it rarely comes up anyway. We just thought it'd be a cool idea, because generally speaking, you don't want to take any risk with such an expensive piece of kit. But sometimes if it's a really close game, it might make the difference. So yeah, we have used it and it has actually come up, and it's pretty cool. So that's it for the actual house rules we have set and we use in our gaming group. The following house rule is one I've taken under consideration but not actually applied just yet. I've decided to call it Sniper Terror. When a unit with the team weapon rule is wounded by a sniper's shot, it must make a morale check. If successful, it stays on the battlefield. If unsuccessful, the unit is removed from the game. This simulates the team fleeing in panic at the sight of their sniped comrade. Some people would argue that the sniper, if you're rolling well on the day, can be one of the most overpowered units in the game, especially if the opponent is using a lot of small teams, weapons teams, that sort of thing. So this rule balances things out a little bit. It still means that the sniper can be quite deadly, but it also means that those weapons teams, such as the unfortunately underrepresented medium machine gun teams, for example, other things like mortar teams, if they can get one-shotted by a sniper, then at least now they've still got a chance to stick around. So as mentioned, it hasn't been actually introduced to the group yet. I will submit it to them, see what they think. So you may, or may not, for that matter, see the rule pop up in future battle reports. Well, that's it. If you made it this far, big pat on the back. You get psychic fist bumps from me. So hopefully you've discovered something that you might apply to your own games. And by the way, I'm always keenly interested to find out what other people use in their own groups, house rules and the like. Anything you think that I might be interested in, anyone else that watches these videos might be interested in, chuck it in the comments. But that pretty much wraps her up. We're all done. So from me, Damo, to you, dear viewer, cheers, take care, and keep on gaming.